Alrighty guys, check out this hand that we played with one of my personal favorite hands, Ace-5 of diamonds. We're playing 2-5 No Limit Texas Holdem. We're playing a 5-handed game and we are on the button facing an early position raise to $20 and a call. In this situation, I want to bump it up with Ace-5 and we 3-bet to 70. Small blind gets out of the way. The big blind makes the cold call, the initial raiser calls, and the last player calls. So we're going to take Ace-5 of diamonds on the button in position to an absolutely bloated pot with 280 in the middle, 4 ways, and the dealer puts out Queen 7-6 with 2 hearts. Pretty much whiffed. We've got 1 over, the bottom end of a backdoor straight draw, not even a diamond out there to help us, so that's great. On the flop, it checks all the way to me, and with everything I just said, I don't want to get pushy as a bluff into 3 other people, so I decide to check it back. We're going with the same gang to a turn. That comes a really good card, all things considered. It's an ace. For a second time, it checks all the way to me. And in this situation, I take a step back and I think, if we bet here, why are we betting here, okay? Am I betting top pair for value with a 5 kicker? I mean, that's just the recipe to get value owned with someone else calling me down with an ace. I mean, maybe we're gonna get worse queens to call, but the ace is gonna be really good for my image and my position. Are we betting as a bluff? Does top pair make sense to bluff with here? If we're betting the ace because it looks good for us, should we bet with an ace? I think we could have some other hands, like King Jack for a straight draw, maybe some hearts, or even an open ender. With all those things in mind, I actually decided to check this street since I can just close the action. We're going all 4 of us into one final card, and we must be a profit. Let's go. We got so lucky. Runner Poker hits that magic 5 on the river, giving us a super disguised 2 pair. For a 3rd time, it checks all the way to me, and now it's time to put in that good old value bet. We bet 180. The big blind folds, the initial raiser folds, and it's only down to the last player in the hand. They hum and haw for a little bit, and they say out loud because we didn't bet the ace, he doesn't give us credit for it, and eventually he tosses in the call. We announce 2 pair, we're good, and we scoop a pretty good 3-bet pot. We gotta get lucky sometimes. We're called Runner Poker for a reason. Let's keep going. Wanna see me play your favorite hand? Leave it in the comment and I'll give it my best shot. While you're there, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content. Really helps me out a bunch, and I really appreciate it. Alrighty, we're gonna snap back just a little bit to some hands we played earlier in the session before the first one. In this one, we've got King Jack offsuit in early position, and we opened it up to 25. We got 2 callers, one in middle position and one in late position. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, 75 in the middle. That comes a fairly favorable flop, if I do say so myself. Comes King Jack 4, we flop a monster with top 2 pair. In this spot, I c-bet 40. Really should have bet bigger into 2 people, as the middle position player calls, and the late position player folds. We're going heads up out of position to a turn. That comes a very deceptively unfortunate card. It's an ace. I say deceptively because although this card is really good for our range and our image, it's not really actually that great of a card for our exact hand. We lose to ace jack and we lose to queen 10, which are very reasonable hands our opponent could have here. I think that in this spot we should probably just go into check call mode, but I decide to keep firing for 80. When our opponent quickly raises us to 300, now we feel absolutely awful. I mulled over for a little bit and decide on a tight fold, even though I don't think it's that tight because even boating on a river sometimes won't even save us against ace jack. Our opponent is nice enough to flash us queen 10 of spades, so we made a good fold. Alrighty, you guys saw the title of the video. We got the first king and queen of the night, each of spades, and we're first to act and open it up to 25. We get 3 callers consisting of a middle position player, the button, and the big blind. We're taking king, queen, 4 ways to a flop out of position with $100 in the middle. That comes a fairly favorable flop of queen 9 deuce rainbow. Got top pair, a decent kicker, and a backdoor straight draw, and a backdoor flush draw. When the big blind checks to us, I think this is an absolutely reasonable c-bet candidate, and we bet 60. Middle position calls, button folds, and the big blind makes the call. With 1 player out and sandwiched in between 2 players, we're going 3 ways to a turn. There comes an offsuit 6, completing the full rainbow and really breaking it all out. We love to see it. Big blind checks, and we continue again for 110. Middle position player gets out of the way, and the big blind makes the call. I feel like I got to give the big blind some credit for a strong hand here, calling 2 streets on a very dry board. I guess the only real draw they could have is jack 10. Nevertheless, we're going heads up to the final card coming, and it's a beautiful brick card. It's a 6. Big blind checks, and now it's the time to bet for value, right? Well, if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you know that a huge hole in my game is missing river value bets, costing me tons of potential chips. I was too fixated at the time on if the big blind called 2 streets, then they gotta be relatively strong, right? So at the time, just thinking about ending the hand was really nice, so I checked back, and of course, the big blind rolls over Queen Jack that could have called a potentially large bet on the river. Not really feeling too great about that one, but nevertheless, we still rack in a fairly decent sized pot.
Uh-oh. Oh, blind. Yeah, I'm blind cool.
All right, the very next hand, we get an even further upgraded hand from the one we just had. We've got pocket queens in the big blind, now facing a button straddle. We make it 40 to go. Folds all the way back around to the button straddler, who makes the call. We're going heads up to a flop. It comes ace 4-3 rainbow. Beautiful board for our range, terrible board for our hand. Definitely gonna put in the c-bet here though, just to keep him honest. The button calling range from a straddle shouldn't really contain a lot that can call on this board, so we bet 35. Button pretty quickly calls, which not really happy to see. So we're going heads up to a turn that comes a 7. Great. Now even the best drawing hand of 5-6 got there. Feeling like I'm not really beating much, I decide to check. The button bets 75, and I'm not gonna thick skull this one. I just decide to let it go. The button actually shows us 5-6 for the turn straight, having us drawing completely dead. Glad that we were able to come to the fold on that one and not get too sticky. Alrighty, we're gonna take a quick break from the kings and queens to bring you another one of my favorite hands, that being 6-8 suited. We're in the cutoff facing 1 limp, and we make it 25. Button makes the call, and the limper makes the call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, sandwiched in between 2 players that come 7-3-3 with 2 hearts. We flop pretty good, for our range at least. Low paired boards are generally good for the pre-flop aggressor, and on top of that, we've got a flush draw and a backdoor straight flush draw. When the limper checks, we continue for 50. Button gets out of the way, and the limper calls. We're going heads up now in position to a turn card that comes an offsuit jack. Limper checks, and it was at this point in the hand where something was off, something was strange. As I was assembling my bet, something felt wrong. They tell you that you need to go with your gut. And in this situation, I went with my gut. I held on to that feeling for dear life, and I checked back. We do actually make our flush here on the river, but it's a terrible card with the jack of hearts double pairing the board. And to make matters worse, our opponent bets 75. Pretty easy fold with a flush here on a double paired board, just not very fun. We make the fold, and then this happens.
I flopped it.
You flopped it?
I flopped it.
Oh my God! Get that in here. That's right, I guess they really did flop it. They turn over pocket 3s for flopped quads that actually qualified for the room high hand and held. So wow, sometimes you just gotta go with your gut. Alrighty, back to the video theme. We've got ace queen offsuit under the gun, and we make it 25. Folds around to both the blinds who make the call. So we're taking ace queen offsuit 3 ways, somehow in position while under the gun, to a flop that comes ace king 9 with 2 hearts. Feeling pretty good with top pair, top kicker. When the blinds both check to us, we continue for 50. Small blind calls, and the big blind gets out of the way. We're going heads up to a turn, which is again another fantastic card. It's a queen. We've now got 2 pair. Small blind checks. We continue our aggression for 100. Small blind once again makes the call. Off to a river. We're really hoping for a nice brick, which of course we don't get. It's a 10, and any jack alone can beat us. The small blind can definitely have some jacks like king jack, queen jack, or ace jack. In this situation, when the small blind checks, I decide to take my raw showdown value and check back. Small blind announces 2 pair, which is going to be no good as we show our higher 2 pair, and we take a fairly sizable pot. Don't blink, you might feel some deja vu. An exact orbit later, we've got king queen offsuit under the gun, and we open the action up to $30. Folds around to the same blinds who make the call again, so we're going 3 ways in position as under the gun to a flop that comes queen jack 5. Pretty good. We've got top pair with a decent kicker. When it checks to us, we bet 30 for value. Both blinds make the call, so the 3 amigos are going to a turn that comes in 8. Yeah, the obvious 9-10 open-ender got there, which isn't great, but if they don't have that, I don't really think we're going to be beat a whole lot at all, as because the pot was multi-way, queen jack for top 2 pair probably would have raised, as well as any of the sets. When the blinds check to me a second time, I bet 100 for value. Both blinds think for a little bit respectively, and then each end up making the fold. Feels good to keep scooping pots with our kings and queens. Don't blink, or you might get some deja vu. We've got king queen offsuit in the small blind this time, facing a button straddle, and we open it up to $45. folds all the way back around to the button straddler who makes the call. So we're going heads up out of position to a flop that comes 7-7-10 rainbow. Now in this spot, I decided to take the C-bet for 30. Button makes the call, which is kind of concerning considering they called pretty quickly, as generally paired boards are going to be good for the pre-flop aggressor, but with the 7-7-10 board, since it's in the higher set against the wide button range, I think if they're calling pretty quick here, they could actually have something. Heads up to a turn out of position that comes in 8, not really changing the board a whole lot. We check it over to our opponent to see what they want to do, and they like their hand, and they bet 75. I don't think there's really a lot we can do here other than fold, so that's what we do. And the button is kind enough to show us a 7, which is way good. Think you're seeing double? How about now? That's right, we got king queen offsuit twice more after the previous 2 hands that we just talked about, but I'm not really going to cover them in detail as they're not that interesting. We played them very similarly, very poorly. We opened a little bit wide from early position, c-bet the flop after we missed, checked at sub point of the hand, and ended up folding. So not really much to talk about there, but I thought it was kind of cool how many times we picked up king queen this session. It was at this point in the night where our table was kind of getting short-handed. We were down to about 5 players, including myself. So as a table, we decided to impose a mandatory under-the-gun straddle to keep the action moving. We find ourselves in that straddle with ace-queen offsuit, facing 2 limps, and a small blind raised to 60. Big blind gets out of the way, and in this situation, there's absolutely merit to 3-betting. I believe that's going to be correct a lot of the time, so we can bump the other 2 limpers out. But as played, I decided that the straddle should be played more like the big blind, and I just decided to defend and make the call. First limper gets out of the way, and the second limper makes the call. We're going 3 ways in the middle between 2 players with 180 in the pot that comes 3, 4, 5. The small blind checks, which I actually think is very odd, as this should be a pretty good board for them to c-bet a high percentage of the time. I almost considered taking control of this pot myself, but the last limper in the hand is the player that's been playing a crazy wide range, so I don't want to really get tangled up in something I can't handle, so I check. The limper checks behind, so we're actually going to get a free card here. Off to a turn, that comes a 4. The small blind now decides to pick their aggression back up with a bet of 125. I'm not going to get pushy between the 2 of them, so I make the fold. We're going to keep talking about this hand though, as it's pretty interesting and you guys are going to get to see it. Small blind thinks for a little bit before ultimately ripping their entire stack into the middle for about 600 total. Woof, what a bet. The small blind eventually makes the call, so you guys are going to get to see it. They decide to run it 1 time for all the marbles, and the river comes the 7 of hearts. The limper turns over 10-4 of diamonds for turned trips. I told you this player was playing loose, calling $60 pre-flop with 10-4. The small blind can't do anything else except muck, and a huge pot gets pushed towards 10-4. Look at that. A really strong big pot won by a really marginal starting hand. Alrighty, for the last hand we're going to talk about here, we've got 7-4 of clubs in that under the gun straddle an orbit later. I don't exactly remember who was in the hand, but it looks like 3 limpers to me. We check the option. We're going 4 ways out of position to a flop. It comes king 8-3 with 2 clubs. At least we got a flush draw. That always feels nice. We check. Not really going to get pushy with just a flush draw, a mediocre flush draw at that, into 3 other people, and it checks all the way around. We're going with the same gang to a 4th card that comes a pretty good card for us. It's the 6 of clubs. Let's go. We've got a flush now, and we're going to bet for value. We bet $20. The player to our direct left makes the call, and everybody else gets out of the way. We're going to a final card out of position that comes, and not the greatest card. It's an offsuit 6. Now sitting with a flush on a paired board. We can't really be too scared of it, as I'm not going to give my opponent credit for a lot of full houses, maybe 6-8, maybe pocket 3s, but that's about it. We bet 50 for value. What we hate to see is when our opponent raises us to 175. This player has been playing pretty solid all night, not really showing down a lot of bluffs. I think it over for a while and I decide on this. Our gut's been pretty good. Our intuition has been pulling us in the right direction, and I decide on another tight fold. Somehow, our opponent flashes us pocket kings for top full house, which I wasn't going to give him credit for at all, but I guess the failed plan for the limp re-raise is always a thing. Again, if you like my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Really helps the channel out a lot, and I appreciate it. You are a fantastic human being. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. We were into the game for $1,100, out of the game for $1,420, booking a win of $320 over the course of about 5 hours of play, which comes out to about $64 an hour, or 13 big blinds per hour. All right, to all those who have been watching my vlogs from the very beginning, You guys remember where this is? We did one of the first 5 vlogs here, I'll give you that. Comment down below if you know the name of where I am. And just like that, as always, my friends, keep your body healthy, keep your mind healthy. This is Runner Poker. Have a good one.